Miami's in kind of an interesting standpoint. We can talk a little bit more about history in a little bit. Miami was sort of part of where this happened the last time. Miami's also a really interesting school. It's one of a very, very select few schools that is in this top 50, technically top 100 because it also includes liberal arts, but top 100 schools and top 50 football programs based on the CFN 5-year program study that they did a couple years ago. It was a phenomenal piece of analysis. And there's only 12 schools that are in that top 100 or top 50, technically, depending on how you measure it, schools and the top 50 football programs. And Miami's one of them. And the ACC has 3 of the 12, with Notre Dame, who is part of the ACC, sort of de facto, but part of the ACC in all other sports, Georgia Tech, and Miami. The Big Ten, and I've used this slide before, but Mark, this is the first time the slide has actually been adjusted now to take the Big Ten to 5 and the Pac-12 down to 1. So we had a little bit of changes. Another thing about Miami, a lot of people don't understand. You guys understand this as Miami fans. For anybody who's not from Miami, Miami is an awesome, small, elite private school in Coral Gables, just outside Miami. Very similar to Northwestern, USC, Duke, SMU. That realm of small private schools that have a big punch when they play football. This is sort of looking at. I did a top 40. Put this on Twitter. By the way, if any of you guys want these slides, they're on my Twitter at TJ Altimore. TJ Altimore is like Baltimore with no B. I think it's on the screen. You can download the slides real quick and follow along with us for those interested. A lot of people have asked for that. Looking at just the A5 or the Power 5, technically the A5 conferences, I did a top 40 of the academic schools. So that's the thing that's really, football and money is what sort of drives the networks, but associations academically are what drive university presidents in a big way. And what's a lot of people don't realize is Miami is in that ultra elite tier. You guys are actually tied for 19 in terms of top academic institutions that play Power 5 football. So you guys are in the ultra elite zone, which makes you really highly desirable. One thing Miami does not have is the AAU status that you hear a lot about. And that is mostly because, you guys are a great school. It's mostly because you don't do as much graduate research. So there's a very, very few select schools, Wake Forest, Notre Dame, Miami, a couple others. Dartmouth used to be in this category until about 2 years ago, that are very elite academic institutions that just graduate research isn't one of their biggest things. You guys are world-class in marine biology and a bunch of other things, but you don't do as much of that graduate research. And so as a result, you're not in the AAU, but you're sort of in that weird gray area of schools that are in that, batting in that area, that part of the batting order, but not actually AAU members. So looking at you guys, we've done this in a couple of shows, looking at these heat maps that break down conferences and people in them on 3 different metrics. And when you hear about how the Big 12 evaluates schools, how the Big 10 evaluates schools, how the Pac-12 evaluates schools, they all kind of do variations on the same. They look at really sort of 3 categories. They mix it up a little bit, but the first one is they will look, and the most important one, quite frankly, is they look at the institution, academics, and resources. So, what kind of institution is this? Who's the university? How do we want to play with them? Then they look at the market, and then they look at athletics and football. And what typically what they're doing is they're qualifying an institution to say, all right, is this a school that we are interested in having in our conference? And if the answer is yes, it's like you hear salespeople talk all the time about like qualifying a buyer. They're qualifying, like, is this somebody we're interested in having in our conference? And if the answer is yes, then the next question starts to look at the TV numbers and all that kind of stuff. They are not going to add somebody into the conference that they don't think is worthy, and they're not going to add somebody in unless they're really desperate. Pac-12 is sort of in that realm a little bit right now. But they're not going to add somebody in the conference, especially if they don't trust that institution with their own students. Because a conference, you have a vote. Everybody's got an equal vote. And those presidents are looking at those other presidents and those other ADs And they're looking at those institutions and really saying, like, are we prepared to trust you with a vote that affects our students? And this is a very interesting thing for the Pac-12, because they have traditionally been, Pac-12 and the Ivy League kind of are these two, like, very a little bit more ivory tower organizations, and the Big Ten to a little bit lesser extent, that very much view important standards like of who they want to associate with. And to university administrators, this is a big deal. Like, who are you associating with? Because this has to do with impacts your donors, impacts your faculty recruitment, impacts your marketing, your branding, and your image. Not your branding like, oh, I want to sell some sweatshirts, but your branding of attracting regular students, which is your most important thing, attracting employers who are going to hire your students, and attracting the donors who are going to pay for your whole school. So Miami is in an interesting category. And one of the reasons that Miami has a lot of value that people don't always appreciate is that Miami is a world-class school. Now, you take a look here, you guys in the ACC, and this, again, there's no like exact where you fit in. These are just kind of rough things. You know, and these green is the best in the conference. Red is the worst in the conference. There is no, I'll tell you, and Mark and I have talked about this before, there are no crappy schools in the Power 5 conferences. Seriously, even the worst of the lowest rated, which is Mississippi State, is an outstanding global institution. So every school in the Power 5 conferences is a great quality school. But you take a look here, it really compares it against each other. Look how much green there is for Miami. Because you guys have a lot of value. Just people can see you guys are a top program. Take a look at you within the SEC. Miami relative to the rest of the SEC itself. I mean, you guys are also a very, very highly rated program. I mean, an institution. The rest of your sports like aren't quite as strong. Now take a look at even Miami in the Big Ten. You guys are right in the middle of the pack. You know, you get you sort of don't do as well in terms of like your Olympic sports, but you're right in the middle of the pack. You guys, for example, now take a look at USC, UCLA, and Notre Dame. Some people are a little surprised. They're like on the edge of the Big Ten, which is pretty awesome. But you know, you guys, Miami really could fit in anywhere. And you have another advantage that doesn't get counted as much, I think, which is that people want to go to Miami. And that it's not that matters for like, you know, fans and, you know, camper vans and all that kind of stuff, but it matters a lot for donors and big dollar people that want to go to those games, because those games are where people network. I mean, you guys, I don't know if you know this or not at Miami games, but your donors are all coming to your football games. It's where they mingle with each other. They get to hang out with your famous alumni and your fans and stuff like that. USC does exactly the same thing. USC and Miami are famous for this. You know, those games are the place to be, especially when you guys are winning. And I think you guys have another advantage that makes you incredibly valuable. Your president, supposedly, the word on the street, and you heard it in the media, was that Miami, post the Nevin Shapiro scandal, was very much sort of backed away from football. And your president took a lot of flack for that. A lot of flack, like president almost getting fired, probably flack, and changed his tune and replaced your in like, what was that, Mark? 5 days, they replaced the athletic director and the coach.
Yeah.
Without, I don't think you even fired the first two before you hired the replacements. It was kind of dickish, kind of baller, a little bit of both, but impressive. But it showed Miami exactly the same thing USC did it within like 2 weeks. But it showed that Miami was committed to succeeding in football. And I think that gives Miami an incredible value to any conference. Like, people know that Miami is here, Miami's going to play, and Miami's going to do great. They also, you know, your president, they trust to make votes about their school. They like Miami.